I wanted to start off by giving a little bit of context of who and what functions and powers the NCRST has. So the NCRST was established by an Act of Parliament, Act number 23 of 2004, the Research, Science and Technology Act. And within that Act, it provides for the coordination, promotion and development of research, science and technology in Namibia, but it also establishes the NCRST. It does another function as well, the establishment of the Research, Science and Technology Fund. So there are two things that are established under that Act in addition to everything else that the Act provides for. Now, the NCRST was then really started from 2013-2014. So that's, in essence, where the NCRST then started with its functions. It's very important to note that when Vision 2030 was drawn up, NCRST was a twinkle in the eye. Because in Vision 2030, it says that there shall be established, something like an NCRST. It had different wording slightly, but it's essentially the NCRST. And so this then came to fruition with this Act. So, now what are the functions and powers of the Commission according to that Act? Many. It runs through, I tried to put it on slides once, and it ran over 4 slides. So this is sort of trying to condense it. We are, in essence, responsible for the coordination, promotion, and development of research, science, technology, and innovation in the country. That also includes, for instance, the Act provides for national facilities as well. The Act further provides for establishing a national program on identifying the priorities for research, science, technology, and innovation, which my team will touch on later. But some of the functions are to monitor and supervise, RSTI, to prepare and review that national program that I just spoke about, provide direction and policy guidance. We are also responsible to promote, facilitate, and organize seminars, conferences, workshops, whatever, in an effort to promote and develop. Promote broad participation and collaboration in RSTI. Remember that these are national ones. We are not tied to specific institutions. We are also not only there for specific institutions within Namibia. And then, of course, represent Namibia at international events, awareness and national appreciation, industrial and commercial outputs, provide research grants, loans, bursaries, information systems, and dissemination. This is also very important. National RSTI data is something that we will also touch on later in our presentation, and cooperate to develop innovation. So we have the innovation function as well, capacity building, collaboration and facilitation. We are also the research, what you see in other countries, the National Research Council, that is what NCRST is as well. So we're the research regulator, but we're also a National Research Council. In other words, we're the National Research Funding Agency. And then, of course, advise the Minister, the President, and the Parliament on functions and initiatives of the Commission and on policy matters. So, that's a mouthful, and that's quite some mandate. So sometimes when you're sitting on the outside, we don't really realize, all of the coordination functions and duties and powers of the Commission, and hence why I started off with this. In my colleagues' presentations, you will see that we will endeavor to touch on many of the matters provided for in the Act. Now, the Act also provides for the establishment of the RST Fund. And this is quoted directly from the Act. And what are the sources of funding for the fund, and that's basically the allocation, the budgetary allocation that we are getting from, that's being appropriated by Parliament, fees that are received under the Act. The Act makes provision for several types of services that we need to render, and then what the payments would be, interest or dividends earned on investments, all monies derived from the sale of assets, monies borrowed, monies received through grants and donations, as well as monies obtained through the sale of publications or reference material, data and information, and then all other money which may accrue to the Commission from any other source. So those are the provisions as to where the money comes from. Now, on that money, we will see what are we supposed to do with the money from that fund. So I'm just extracting from the functions and powers that speaks to the fund, and it is to coordinate, NCRST is to coordinate the use of monies of the fund and investments, facilitate separately or in cooperation with the private sector, the use of public good research outputs, and to stimulate proposals of broad national interest for research. And that last point we will speak to in detail as well. And then to provide for research grants, loans, bursaries, and other similar financial aid in terms of research, science, and technology. So that speaks to sort of under the functions and powers what we do with the money. And then it gives, in particular, a section on how can we use the funds. Now, the funds from the RST fund is to pay for the administrative expenses of the Commission, administrative expenses of every council. We currently already have the Biosafety Council that reports administratively to NCRST. We are also busy with setting up the Space Council that will be appointed this year still. And then we have also the Indigenous Knowledge IKS Council that will actually be, that we are earmarking for appointment for next year. And I know that there are some councils that are on the, that have been parked due to the lack of funding. But we have to pay the administrative expenses of every council. We have to fund the costs of any project or activity of the Commission, as well as of any research institute with the approval of the Commission. Remember I said we're also responsible for national infrastructure and national facilities. So, and also to pay for remunerations and allowances payable by the Commission or any other such expenses. In other words, what does the fund do? It's funding the operations of NCRST. Now, if you look at the sources of funding that we had, and in today's economic environment, we got, for instance, it was 42 million, the allocation this year, for operational expenses. Now look at all of the functions that we have to do, including availing funds for research nationally, research infrastructure, etc. So what do we do if we have such little money? And the money that comes in from research permits, etc., is minimal. So one of the things that we've already sort of noticed is that every fund that's established in Namibia has a levy attached to it, because that is how your fund is going to grow and provide for all of your national initiatives. However, by us, the R&D levy is missing. Now, it might have had a very good reason why it was omitted initially. However, maybe government thought we would always have enough money. However, this is something that we are interrogating at the moment. The oil and gas sector, as you could see yesterday, they had R&D in there. The green hydrogen legislative review is underway, and they have engaged with us and said, look, We see that there's an R&D levy that's missing, but as we're looking at investments, let's also see how we could possibly accommodate that. And why I'm saying that is because we're looking at sectoral ones as well on R&D levy, because we have to think, how are we going to get it? Are we only going to tax, for instance, the multinationals, or are we going to tax our own, domestic private sector as well, or how are we going to do it? Now, one of the things that you could actually do as well, the same way that you're saying, let's say to a multinational, that you have to pay an R&D levy, the same way you can give them a tax incentive. You can say, for instance, if you have R&D activities and you can prove it, and of course we set the criteria, then, for instance, you are exempted from paying that R&D levy. So this was something that we are internally and together with the ministry are looking at best ways how we can address that. But we definitely need a levy to make the fund grow, because otherwise how do we finance everything? Now, currently, given the shortage in money, our main source for activities in the RSTI space, that's not to do with salaries and utilities, is actually coming from international development partners. So NCRST is a member of the Science Granting Councils, and the Science Granting Councils have many calls, funding calls, that we are partaking in, and that is actually how we're at the moment also issuing our research calls. There are 6 research calls lined up that will be sent out within the next 2 months. That's very competitive, it's open to everybody, but we are setting new criteria for such calls, such as that we really want to make impact, so we want to have a quadruple approach on that. You bring in a consortium, you bring in partnerships from communities or NGOs, you bring in partnerships from the private sector, because we need to have sustainability for once, your research is done, what happens further? Publication out, students have graduated, and then what? We really want to see societal impact, and so we're also bringing in different criteria for measuring that. So we will be having 6 research calls coming out within the next 2 months, and as I said, it's open to everyone to participate. And this is where I was saying that we're getting it from the research councils. Namibia is part of the global research councils, so we get it from our collaboration there, and also from the science granting councils, as well as other international donors that we are also approaching and writing proposals to. In fact, I think we just finished one during lunchtime. So, but despite the monetary issues, one thing that NCRST has done to date is it has given out in excess of 172 grants that amounted to about 97 million, and from that 42 masters were graduated and 26 PhDs were graduated. I think we can give ourselves a round of applause, because it's us and you